There's a specific moment of the day that almost no one mentions. It's not when you wake up. It's not when you go to sleep. It's the exact instant when the last person leaves the room and you finally stop being who you were being. It's not a dramatic transformation. There's no music. It's just a silence that arrives slowly, like mist, and suddenly you realize your face has relaxed from an expression you didn't even know you were making. This is not weakness. It is not deceit. It is simply the weight of existing among other people, a weight so constant that you stopped feeling it until the moment it disappears. If any part of this feels familiar to you, you're not alone. And if you ever feel like sharing your experience, the comments are open. The version you present to the world is never the one that appears when you are alone. There's a version of you that wakes up before you. It already knows what it's going to wear, what it's going to say, how its voice will sound. It arranges its expressions like someone setting a table before receiving guests, everything in its place. Everything calculated, everything slightly different from what it really is. This version is not a lie. This needs to be said carefully. It is real only. It's real in the way a shop window is real. It exists to be seen. It exists to function within the outside world, but it doesn't breathe the same way when it's alone. And when loneliness finally arrives, not sad loneliness, but ordinary loneliness, something small unravels. A lowered shoulder, a longer breath, a thought you wouldn't even voice aloud by mistake. The version no one sees begins to take up space. In silence, your thoughts take on a tone you would never let anyone hear. There is a difference between what you think and what you would allow to exist aloud. It's not a small difference. It's the difference between a brightly lit room and what lives in the dark hallway next to it present. Real, but never invited into the conversation. In silence, thoughts don't ask permission. They arrive with a tone that surprises even you sharper, more honest, sometimes darker than anything you would recognize yourself saying. And the strange thing isn't that these thoughts exist. The strange thing is the speed with which you file them away, like folding a piece of paper and stuffing it in your pocket before anyone sees. Not because they're wrong, but because they are. You're in a way that's frightening. In that inner silence, something begins to move more freely. And sometimes that freedom takes a very specific form, that of a conversation that never happened, but that you've rehearsed more times than you can count. You rehearse conversations you'll never have, and in them, you're ruthless. There's a theater that only works inside your head. No audience, no applause, no consequences. In it, you say exactly what you swallowed that afternoon with the firm voice you couldn't find when you needed it. The words come perfectly. They always come too late in mental rehearsal. You don't freeze. You don't hesitate. You don't give in. You look into the eyes of someone who isn't there and finally say what's been stuck behind your teeth. And there's something unsettling about this silent precision, because in these imaginary conversations, you know every response from the other side. You write down both sides, lines your attack and their surrender. It's a trial where you are judge, prosecutor, and verdict giver. This inner theater is neither vanity nor cruelty. It is the place where the mind processes what has not been resolved, where what remained unanswered finally finds an answer, even if it is an answer that will never exist outside of it. And when the rehearsal ends, something even older often emerges. A scene that wasn't imagined, it was lived. And that, for some reason, hasn't gone away yet. Alone, you revisit past humiliations and rewrite the ending. Memory is not a filing cabinet. It's a room you keep frequenting, sometimes without realizing you've entered, sometimes without being able to find your way out. There are scenes that should have lost their power over time, a phrase spoken by someone who may not even remember you, a moment when you felt small in the presence of others, a silence that lasted 3 seconds and felt like years, and yet, alone, you return, not as punishment, or at least not solely as punishment. You return because the mind has a silent need to finish what was left unfinished. So you rewrite. You calmly answer what you answered with trembling. You stand up in the scene where you were sitting. You find the words that were hidden that day and put them exactly where they should have been. The new ending doesn't change what happened, but but it changes something inside you, a small tension that relaxes, a knot that loosens for a few moments. And then the silence returns, and along with it, sometimes comes something you didn't expect, not an old memory, but a very present feeling that you spent the whole day trying not to feel. The anger you swallow in front of others overflows when no one is looking. There's a silent discipline that no one formally taught you. You simply learn it early, and, well, that certain things don't show. That anger, especially, needs to be kept in a drawer, and you got good at it. Good at taking a deep breath at the wrong moment. Good at smiling when your jaw was clenched. Good at saying, okay, in a voice that sounded almost genuine. The problem isn't the drawer. The problem is that drawers have limits. And what's been pushed inside for hours, sometimes days, needs to go somewhere. So go ahead, not to one person, not to one situation. Go to the silence of the bathroom, to the car parked in the garage, to the pillow that receives words that were never spoken aloud. Sometimes it's disproportionate irritation over something small, a dripping faucet, a line in a video, nothing really. But it's not about that. It never was about that. It's about what went unaddressed all day, and after it passes, a strange calm comes, not the calm of having solved something, the calm of having survived another day carrying more than someone should carry alone. That anger that overflows in silence is not a character flaw. It's a sign that you felt something real, and that for some reason, at that moment, there was no safe space for it to ist. You allow yourself to desire things that completely contradict who you say you are. There's a version of you that no one voted for, one that wasn't planned, wasn't carefully constructed, and doesn't match the name people call you when they need you to be who you've always been. She appears in the silence without asking permission, with desires that don't fit into the narrative you've built about yourself, desires to abandon what always seemed right, to choose what always seemed wrong, not necessarily actions, rarely actions, but thoughts with texture, with color, with weight, with direction, the fantasy of a parallel life where you made a different decision, the desire to be, for one day, unrecognizable to those who know you. And the discomfort doesn't come from the desire itself. It comes from how familiar it seems, from how many times it has already appeared, always with the same force, always in the same silence. Because contradicting who you say you are doesn't mean you're wrong about yourself. It means you're more than a single fixed version of yourself. It means there are layers that have never been shown to anyone else, and these layers don't ask to be displayed. They just need to exist somewhere, even if that place is just the silence of a room where no one else enters. Because along with these unacknowledged desires, there is something even more constant, a voice that observes everything, judges everything, and never stops. There is a constant internal judgment about others, about yourself, that never comes out aloud. There is a voice that never sleeps, a voice that was awake before you opened your eyes today, and that will continue to function long after you pretend to have stopped thinking. She observes everything with a frightening precision. The way someone spoke in a meeting, the tone that didn't match the chosen words, the smile that came a second too late. You didn't ask to notice these things, you simply noticed them. And the voice filed them away, classified them, concluded them all in silence, all in fractions of a second. And then she turns inward with the same precision, with the same file. She revisits what you said 3 hours ago and finds exactly what she should have said. She remembers the expression you made unintentionally, the hesitation that probably everyone noticed, the best version of you that didn't show up when you needed to most. This internal court has no recess, it has no weekends. It doesn't grant automatic clemency, but it also has no ill intent, and that's what makes everything more complex. Because that voice doesn't want to destroy you, it wants to protect you, prepare you, improve you. It just hasn't learned yet that you don't need to be judged to be improved. And when that judgment finally tires, when the voice loses its breath for a few moments, it is precisely in that empty space that the most honest versions of yourself tend to appear. In moments of solitude, you test versions of yourself that are frightening in their honesty. There are experiments you conduct without a name or record, without a laboratory, without a conscious method, just you, the silence, and a question you would never ask aloud to anyone. What if I were different from what I pretended to be today? It's not a crisis, it's not a collapse. It's more subtle than that, almost scientific. A quiet exploration of inner territories that exist but are rarely visited. You test a more selfish thought than usual, an opinion that contradicts what you defended last week. A version of yourself that doesn't yield, that doesn't explain, that doesn't apologize. And you observe how this version moves within you. What's frightening isn't the version itself, it's how well it fits. How well she knows the inner corridors, like someone who's always lived there, just never been introduced. Because testing different versions of oneself in silence isn't instability, it's archaeology. It's about uncovering layers that social life has cemented with years of expectations, roles, and adaptations. And what you find down there is rarely as monstrous as you imagined. It's just human in a more raw way, without the polish that the outside world demands. These versions, tested in silence, don't need approval. They just need a moment to breathe, to exist without being evaluated, without being immediately dismissed as inadequate. And when the test ends and you return to the surface, something has changed, imperceptible to anyone, but present like a small stone in your pocket. Something you will carry with you into the next moment of silence. Because silence, as you've learned, is never truly empty. It's the place where the mind finally stops performing and begins to truly process. What you call reflection is sometimes just an internal tribunal without a defense attorney. You call it thinking. Sometimes you call it processing. On days when you're feeling kinder to yourself, you call it reflection. But there is a difference between observing a thought and being judged for it, between understanding what happened and being condemned for letting it happen. The mind, when alone and without direction, has a silent and persistent tendency to transform any review of the past into a process where you already begin with guilt. The scene returns, you watch it, and immediately the voice begins not with curiosity, but with a verdict. Not with questions, but with conclusions. You should have known. You should have done things differently. Anyone else would have handled it better. None of these sentences are spoken aloud, but they all carry weight. They all have tone. They all come across with the authority of someone who knows every detail of the case. And what makes this court so efficient is precisely the absence of a defense. There's no one to provide context. There's no one to remind you what you were carrying that day. There's no one to tell you that you made the decision with what you had available, with the tiredness you had, the fear you had, the incomplete information you had. This court is not your enemy. It's merely a tool that has only learned half the job, the part that analyzes, compares, and finds flaws. But it has forgotten to learn the other half, the part that considers, weighs, and acquits when acquittal is just. And acknowledging this doesn't solve the court's problems, but it slightly changes the acoustics of the room, like opening a window in a space that's been closed for too long. The air changes, the sentence, perhaps, to "The mask doesn't fall off because you're fake, it falls off because wearing it all day is too exhausting." We've reached the end of the day, not the dramatic end, the ordinary end, the one that arrives without warning, without ceremony, when the last social obligation finally ends. And you're alone again, just like you were at the beginning of this video, but perhaps with different words now to describe what happens in this silence. The mask isn't a lie you tell yourself. It's an adaptation you've developed to navigate a world that demands consistency, predictability, and lightness. Even when you lack any of the three, you carefully built it over the years. You learned which expressions work in which environments, which versions of yourself encounter less resistance, which parts need to be kept hidden so as not to complicate what is simple, and you carry it well better than you imagine. So well that sometimes the people around you don't even realize the weight that lies beneath a presence that seems so natural. But weight is weight, and at the end of the day, when the door closes and silence fills the space that people have left behind, the body simply stops supporting what it no longer needs to support. It's not weakness. It's not a collapse. It's simply the natural relief of someone who has arrived home after hours in a place that demanded a slightly different version of themselves. The mask falls, and what appears underneath isn't frightening, it's just you, without the layer of adaptation, without the filter that the outside world requires. More tired than he showed, more complex than he seemed, more human than any version that fit into a single conversation, in a single day. And this is the quietest and most universal behavior that exists. You're not alone in this. You never have been. The silence you inhabit also inhabits you. There's something this video didn't say directly and perhaps didn't need to, because you already knew. You knew even before the first sentence was finished. That silent recognition that appeared at some point said feeling of this also is no coincidence. It's proof that these behaviors are not isolated flaws. They are the inner architecture of human experience. The part that doesn't appear in superficial conversations, the part that doesn't fit into quick answers, the part that exists, functions, and processes in silence every day, in every person. You rehearse conversations you'll never have. You revisit scenes that should have lost their power. You carry a rage that hasn't found an outlet. You test versions of yourself that have never been presented to anyone. And yet, or perhaps because of all of this, you keep adapting, carrying on, functioning. Keep putting on your mask in the morning with a quiet competence that rarely receives recognition. There is nothing to fix here. There is no diagnosis waiting at the end of this sentence. There is only observation, the same observation that Dostoevsky was already making long before there were technical words to describe what happens inside a single human mind. He knew that loneliness doesn't empty people, it reveals them. And what is revealed, most of the time, is just someone trying to exist honestly in a world that rarely demands true honesty. If any part of this video resonated with you and you hadn't yet named it, that's already enough. Naming is the beginning of understanding. Understanding is the beginning of carrying less weight. And if you want to continue exploring these rarely discussed inner territories, this channel exists precisely for that purpose, to observe, without judgment, what happens when no one is watching. Sign up if it makes sense to you, not as an obligation, as a choice. The next observation is already on its way.